What if the only thing standing between you and everything you've ever wanted is the way you speak to yourself? There's a war happening inside you, not the kind that makes noise, not the kind the world can see, but one that's always there, quietly shaping your every decision. It's the voice that says, you're not ready, you're not enough. What if you fail? That voice doesn't yell, it whispers. And the most dangerous part? Sometimes it sounds just like you. You were born with wonder in your eyes. You looked at the world and believed anything could happen. You didn't worry about being realistic. You didn't care what others thought. You just dreamed. You wanted to fly, to build, to change the world. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Someone laughed when you shared your dream. Someone told you to be practical. Someone told you to be careful. And slowly, piece by piece, you stopped believing. Not because your dream was too big, but because the world was too small. We live in a society that rewards conformity and punishes belief. Not openly, but in subtle ways. It praises comfort. It values safety. It tells you to settle. And if you listen long enough, it becomes normal to lower your standards, shrink your dreams, and call it maturity. But here's the truth. Most people are not living their lives. They're living their fears. They're following invisible rules written by people who gave up on themselves. And they're waiting for permission to believe again. But the permission you're waiting for will never come, because belief doesn't need approval. It doesn't need proof. Belief begins in silence, when no one is watching. It begins when you look at the mountain in front of you and say, I don't know how, but I will. It begins when you feel unworthy, but show up anyway. It begins when you stop asking, is this possible, and start asking, what if it is? And maybe right now, a part of you wants to believe. But another part is tired. Tired of trying, tired of failing, tired of pretending to be okay. That's real, that's human. But listen closely. You don't have to feel strong to take the next step. You just have to stop listening to the voice that says you can't. That voice isn't you. It's an echo of every rejection, every mistake, every time you fell and no one helped you back up. But those things are not your truth. They're just chapters. They're not the whole story. And here's why you need to stay until the end. Because if you can learn, truly learn, to believe as if anything is possible, everything in your life will change. Not just your goals, not just your results. You will change. Because belief isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become. When you believe, you stop begging life to be easier and start becoming stronger. You stop waiting for the right time and start building it. You stop surviving and start living. This isn't about hype. It's not about pretending things are easy. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to stop dreaming. It's about reclaiming the fire that once lived inside you. That fire didn't die, it just went quiet. But it's still there, and it's waiting. Waiting for the moment you finally say, enough. Enough with the doubt. Enough with the fear. Enough with living a life that doesn't feel like yours. Because when you truly believe, when you believe with every part of you, not just in your mind but in your bones, the world shifts. Doors open. Ideas come. Strength you didn't know you had begins to rise. It doesn't happen all at once. But the moment you believe, the momentum begins. It's not the world that needs to change. It's your decision to see it differently. So ask yourself, what if you stopped waiting for proof and started being the proof? What if you lived as if your dream was already on its way and your only job was not to quit? What if, just for today, you silenced the voice that says you can't and replaced it with one that says, try anyway? You don't have to be fearless to believe. You just have to be willing. Willing to take the next breath, the next step, the next chance. And if you do, something powerful begins to awaken inside you. Not just hope, not just desire, but certainty. Quiet, steady, unshakable certainty that even if the path is unknown, even if the odds seem impossible, you will not be stopped. Not this time. The reason most people never rise is not because they don't have the potential. It's because they've been convinced they never did. Somewhere in your life, someone handed you a story. Maybe it was subtle, maybe it was loud, but it planted doubt in your mind. It said, that's too big for you. That's not realistic. You're not that kind of person. And slowly you started living according to that script. Not because you wanted to, but because no one ever told you it was a lie. And that's the trap so many fall into. Not failure, but belief in limitation. We're told from an early age to be careful, to fit in, to stay close to the ground. We're taught to chase security, not possibility. And every time we reach for something bold, there's a chorus of voices ready to bring us back to normal. But what if normal is just fear wearing a mask? They don't warn you about the cost of that fear. They don't tell you that settling will slowly suffocate your spirit, that ignoring your potential won't make life easier. It will just make it emptier, that the pain of staying small always grows louder than the fear of rising. But you feel it. Deep down, even if you can't explain it, you know you were made for more. Not for ease, not for comfort, for more. And here's the truth no one talks about. Most people don't fail because they tried and lost. They fail because they never tried at all. They wait. They wait for clarity. They wait for certainty. They wait for permission. But time doesn't wait. And while they're waiting, life keeps moving. Days turn to years. Dreams turn to regrets. And one day they look back and realize they traded their fire for someone else's approval. But you, right now, you don't have to do that. You don't need anyone's validation to believe. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need all the answers. You just need to unlearn the lie that says you're limited by what's happened to you, the lie that says success belongs to other people, the lie that says dreaming big is dangerous, because what's truly dangerous is not dreaming at all. What if every person who changed the world once believed they couldn't? What if the only difference between them and everyone else was that they stopped listening to fear long enough to take one more step, one more risk, one more chance? What if greatness isn't something you're born with, but something you unlock when you stop living by the rules that were never written for you? And maybe you've made mistakes. Maybe you've been knocked down more times than you can count. That's okay, because the ones who rise the highest are never the ones who had the smoothest path. They're the ones who refuse to stay on the ground. You're not broken, you're not behind, you're not too late. You're just one decision away from changing everything. So here's the decision. Will you keep living the story someone else gave you, or will you write your own? Because belief isn't passive. It's not a wish. It's a choice. It's choosing to show up when your voice shakes. It's choosing to try again when everything inside you says quit. It's choosing to believe that the person you want to become is already inside you, waiting to be claimed, not discovered. You weren't born to live small. You weren't born to shrink yourself so others feel comfortable. You weren't born to bury your fire to fit in. You were born to rise. And that rise begins the moment you decide that the story you were given is not the story you will live. You owe it to yourself to believe, not just for the goals, not just for the wins, but for the life that belief unlocks. The life where you wake up with purpose, where you move with power, where you walk through fear like it's fog, visible, but never solid enough to stop you. So strip away the noise, let go the false limits, silence the voice that says you can't, and ask the question that really matters: what if I can? What if the life you want is closer than it feels? What if the version of you that you admire, that you dream of becoming, is not a fantasy, but a future self waiting for you to believe long enough to become them? This is not about pretending everything is easy. It's not about chasing hype. It's about refusing to accept a reality built on other people's fear. It's about reclaiming the truth that your future is unwritten and your belief is the pen. Hold it, use it, and write something no one saw coming. If you'd like me to continue with the next section, let me know and I'll keep building this momentum. Belief isn't reserved for the chosen few. It's not some mysterious gift handed down to the lucky ones. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be built, shaped, and strengthened over time. This is where most people get it wrong. They think belief is something you either have or you don't. They wait for it to appear like a flash of lightning. They wait for motivation to strike before they move. But that moment rarely comes, not because they're weak, but because they never learned how belief is truly formed. It's not born in comfort. It's forged in action. The truth is, belief begins the moment you do something hard. When you step forward not because you're confident, but because you're willing. Willing to show up, willing to fail, willing to look foolish in the name of growth. That willingness is the first spark, and every time you act, every time you push past resistance, that spark grows. That's how belief is built, through repetition, through motion, through refusing to let fear have the final word. No one starts strong. Everyone begins with doubt. But those who rise above are the ones who take the first step anyway, and then the next, and then the next. They don't wait to feel powerful to act. They act and power follows. You see, confidence isn't a requirement, it's a result. It's earned through doing the uncomfortable again and again until your mind learns a new truth: I can handle this. And once your mind accepts that, a shift happens. You stop seeing struggle as a threat and start seeing it as proof that you're growing. This is where everything changes. Because now, failure isn't the end, it's a teacher. Fear isn't the enemy, it's a signal. Resistance isn't a wall, it's a doorway. And belief isn't some distant dream, it's a muscle you're building with every step you take. So ask yourself, right now, what if you treated belief like a daily practice, not a destination? What if, instead of waiting to feel ready, you trained your mind to rise no matter what? Because that's what real belief is. It's not fragile. It doesn't depend on your mood or your past or the opinion of others. Real belief is steady. It's honest. It's earned in the quiet moments when no one is watching and everything inside you wants to quit. But you keep going. Think of the people you admire, the ones who've done the impossible. They weren't born with certainty. They built it, step by step, day by day, with discipline, not hype, with action, not comfort. They didn't need to know how everything would unfold. They just needed to know their next move. And then they made it, again and again, until belief became who they were. This is available to you, right now. You don't need a fresh start. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need the world's permission. All you need is a choice. A choice to begin, to act, to keep showing up even when the voice in your head tells you to stop. That's the only difference between where you are and where you want to be. Consistency in the face of doubt, grit in the face of uncertainty, the decision to keep planting seeds even when you can't see the harvest yet. Because belief grows in layers. At first it feels fragile, like a whisper. But as you keep going, that whisper becomes a voice, and that voice becomes a roar, until one day you no longer question if you're capable. You know you are. Not because someone told you, but because you've proven it to yourself over and over again. And that kind of belief, it's unshakable, it's real, it's yours. No one can take it from you, because it wasn't given, it was earned. So if you've been waiting for belief to find you, stop waiting, create it. Start where you are. Start with what you have. Start scared. Start small, but start. Because your future isn't built in giant leaps. It's built in daily choices. And the most powerful choice you can make today is to believe. Not because it's easy, but because you refuse to keep living like your potential doesn't matter. You're not just learning how to believe, you're learning how to become. And that journey will challenge you, stretch you, even break you at times, but it will also rebuild you. Stronger, clearer, braver, more alive than you've ever been. This is your work. This is your path. This is your power. Build it, earn it, live it. And if you're ready, I can keep going. Every time you take action in the face of doubt, you reinforce something powerful, your ability to keep going. And that's the real foundation of belief. Not blind confidence, not motivation that fades, but persistence. Quiet, steady, relentless persistence. You don't need to be fearless to succeed. You need to be committed. Because fear will visit. Doubt will whisper. Resistance will press down on you. But those things only win if you stop. The people who rise, the ones who rewrite what's possible, they feel it all too. But they walk through it. Not because they're stronger, but because they've decided to keep moving forward no matter what. And that decision changes everything. Belief grows when you stop chasing perfection and start embracing progress. It grows when you show up on the days you don't want to. When you give your best even when no one's clapping. When you fall, get back up and try again. Every single time you do that, you are proving to yourself that you are more powerful than your excuses. Because here's what most people don't realize. Belief doesn't come from success. It comes from showing up when it's hard, when it's dark, when it feels pointless. That's when the roots go deep. That's when strength is built. Not when it's easy, but when it's heavy and you lift it anyway. So stop asking if it will be hard. Of course it will. Everything meaningful is. Ask instead, will it be worth it? Will you look back one day and be proud that you didn't give up when it got uncomfortable? Because that moment of discomfort, that space where most people turn back, is where belief either grows or dies. And you get to choose. You always get to choose. This is how the impossible becomes real. It doesn't happen in one leap. It happens in steps, in the quiet wins no one sees, in the inner conversations where you remind yourself why you started. It happens when you commit to persistence, even when progress feels invisible. You don't need a miracle. You don't need permission. You need consistency. You need to show up like your future depends on it, because it does. You need to build belief like it's your job, because it is. The life you want is not something you find. It's something you create, brick by brick, choice by choice. This isn't just about success. It's about who you become in the process. Because the version of you that stays consistent, that doesn't quit, that keeps believing through the storm, that person becomes unstoppable. That person doesn't just achieve goals. They change lives. They become a force, not just for themselves, but for others too. Because belief is contagious. When you start living like anything is possible, you don't just inspire yourself. You give others permission to do the same. You break chains. You change the energy in rooms. You show people that limits are lies and that faith is a decision, not a feeling. So take a breath. Feel the doubt. Let the fear be there and move anyway. Step forward even if your hands shake, even if your voice cracks, even if your heart races. Because belief isn't about being ready. It's about being willing. And the more you move, the more the fear loses power. The more you try, the quieter the doubt becomes. Until one day, you realize it's still there, but it can't stop you anymore. That's when you know you've built something real. There will be days you feel behind, days you wonder if it's all worth it, but those are not signs you're failing. They're signs you're growing, because growth isn't supposed to be comfortable, it's supposed to stretch you. And belief is what holds you together during the stretch, so hold the vision, trust the process, stay in the fight. Every single time you choose not to quit, you're winning. Every time you rise again, you're becoming. And every time you believe in what you can't yet see, you're moving closer to the life you were meant to live. You don't have to get it perfect. You don't have to feel strong. You just have to stay in motion. Because motion fuels belief. Action creates clarity. And persistence shapes destiny. Keep showing up, keep building, keep becoming. The world is not waiting for you to be perfect. It's waiting for you to believe. If you're ready, I'll continue building the next section with even more intensity. Belief is not just what you think, it's what you see when you close your eyes. It's the inner vision that refuses to die, no matter how far away it feels. Because before you ever achieve anything on the outside, you have to see it clearly on the inside. That vision is your compass. And you can't see where you're going, you'll keep walking in circles, lost in distractions, trapped by limits that were never real to begin with. Your mind is more powerful than you've been taught. It doesn't just react to reality, it creates it. The pictures you hold, the words you repeat, the future you imagine, all of it becomes instruction. Your brain listens, your body follows, your life responds. That's why you must guard what you visualize. If you constantly see failure, pain, disappointment, you begin to expect it. And if you expect it long enough, you begin to create it. Not because you're cursed, but because the mind always looks for what it believes is true. It's not magic, it's focus, it's pattern recognition, it's identity. But the same rule works the other way. If you teach your mind to see the win, to feel it, hear it, taste it, live in it even before it exists, you start to behave differently. You speak differently. You move with purpose. You persist longer, because now you're not chasing a fantasy. You're moving toward a future you've already lived in your mind 1,000 times. That's not delusion, that's preparation. Every great achievement began in the invisible. It was born in imagination. shaped by vision, fueled by repetition, and driven by a deep, unshakable belief that said, "This isn't just possible. It's already mine, I just haven't arrived yet." You have to stop asking if the dream is too big. Stop wondering if you're worthy. That question will only lead you back to hesitation. Instead, ask this: can I see it? Not with your eyes, but with your spirit, with your will, with the part of you that refuses to accept a life that feels small. Because if you can see it, you can begin to build it, piece by piece, moment by moment, action by action, and with each step the vision becomes less distant and more real. This is where belief becomes dangerous to doubt, because now you're not just hoping, you're creating. You're not waiting to be convinced. You're training your nervous system to expect it. And when expectation replaces hesitation, your energy changes. Your environment shifts. People feel it. Life responds. But here's what you must understand. Vision without discipline is just a fantasy. Seeing it is the spark. Living it is the work. And that work begins with showing up each day as the version of you who already believes. Not someday, not later. Now, speak like them, think like them, move like them, not because you're pretending, but because you're aligning. The moment you start living in agreement with your future, you begin to collapse the distance between who you are and who you're becoming. That's why visualization is not just a tool, it's a responsibility. You are building the framework of your future every time you imagine with intention. And the more detailed that vision, the more magnetic your actions become. Vague goals don't move you, clear ones do. Dreams wrapped in emotion are the ones that pull you out of bed when motivation disappears. So sit with the vision, picture it until it becomes real in your mind. Then show up in your life like it's already unfolding. Speak your dream even if your voice shakes. Claim your goal even if no one believes. Because belief isn't about convincing others. It's about convincing yourself over and over, until your entire being aligns with your purpose. Doubt doesn't disappear because you ignored it. It disappears because you drowned it out with truth, with repetition, with conviction. And nothing speaks louder to your mind than what it sees with clarity and feels with intensity. This is how people do the impossible. They see it before anyone else does. They carry that vision like fire inside them, and even when everything around them says quit, they press on, because they already know how the story ends. You can't wait for the world to believe in your vision. You have to believe in it first. You have to build it in your mind so clearly that the world has no choice but to catch up. So close your eyes. Picture the life you want, not just the highlight reel, but the process, the struggle, the grit. See yourself rising, see yourself conquering, see yourself becoming. And when you open your eyes, start walking like it's already yours. Because the most powerful form of belief is not what you say, it's how you move. If you're ready, I'll keep building on this momentum with the next piece. If you want to change your life, you have to change the story you tell yourself about who you are. Because everything you do flows from identity. Not just what you believe is possible, but what you believe is possible for you. The mind doesn't chase what it doesn't believe it deserves. You can visualize success. You can write the goals. You can repeat affirmations all day. But if deep down you're still carrying the weight of who you used to be, you'll keep sabotaging your future just to stay familiar. This is the hidden reason people stay stuck. They don't just lack strategy. They're trapped in an outdated identity, still living by a version of themselves shaped by failure, by fear, by old labels and voices that never belonged to them in the first place. And as long as you keep repeating the old story, your life will keep echoing it back to you. But you are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not your lowest moments or your darkest days. You are the author of what comes next. And that power begins the moment you choose to write a new narrative, one that reflects who you're becoming, not who you used to be. Because belief without identity is temporary. You might feel inspired for a day. You might take action for a week. But eventually the old story pulls you back, unless you replace it with one that's stronger, one that reflects your vision, your values, your true potential. This is how transformation begins. Not just with action, but with declaration. Not just with habits, but with identity. Start saying who you are. Say it before it's obvious. Say it before it's popular. Say it until your mind accepts it, your body embodies it, and your results confirm it. I am disciplined. I am resilient. I am becoming everything I was created to be. Not because it feels true yet, but because it's becoming true through repetition. Your brain is always listening. It builds patterns based on what you feed it. The words you use, the thoughts you repeat, the emotions you allow, they all send signals. And if you keep feeding it fear, it will keep giving you hesitation. But if you feed it power, you'll begin to feel unstoppable, even on the hard days. This isn't about ego. It's about alignment. When your identity rises, so does your standard. You stop entertaining distractions that don't match your mission. You stop settling for habits that drain you. You start moving like someone who knows exactly where they're going. And yes, people may not understand it at first. They might question you. They might try to bring you back to the version of you they're more comfortable with. But that's only because your growth exposes their stagnation. Don't shrink to make others feel secure. Don't slow down so they can keep up. Rise. And if they're meant to, they'll rise with you. You weren't meant to live stuck in a cycle of self-doubt. You weren't meant to keep replaying the same pain and calling it your personality. You are not a prisoner of who you've been. You are the architect of who you can become. But you have to choose. You have to speak it. You have to live it before the world reflects it back. And every time you do, you send a message to your mind, this is who we are now. That is the real work. That is how belief becomes unbreakable. Not through hype, but through alignment. Not through pretending, but through consistency. When your words, your thoughts, and your actions all match the identity of the person you're becoming, you begin to create momentum that nothing can stop. And the more you reinforce that identity, the more your environment starts to shift. The people around you change. The opportunities start to align. The obstacles shrink, not because they disappear, but because you've outgrown the version of you that used to be intimidated by them. This is the path. This is the process. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be claimed. You need to look yourself in the mirror and decide, from this day forward, I will no longer betray the future I was meant to live by clinging to the story I was taught to believe. Let go of who you were. Stand in who you are. Speak who you are becoming. And then live it, fully and relentlessly. Because the world doesn't respond to who you were. It responds to who you decide to be. If you're ready for the next surge of momentum, I'll continue writing the next section. Once you take ownership of who you're becoming, you begin to move with a different energy. You stop waiting for the world to validate your effort and start acting like the result is inevitable. That shift, when your mind no longer negotiates with doubt, is when everything starts to accelerate. Because belief is not passive. It's not soft. It's not a whisper in the dark. Belief is fire. It's fuel. It's the internal force that says, I will show up again, even when nothing is working, even when everything inside me screams to walk away. That kind of belief doesn't ask for signs. It becomes the sign. It doesn't chase reassurance. It is reassurance. You move, not because it's easy, but because not moving would mean betraying the person you know you were created to be. And that's the deeper truth. This isn't just about goals or wins or milestones. This is about alignment with your higher self, the version of you who lives fully, who speaks boldly, who gives everything and hides nothing. You're not just trying to reach a destination. You're trying to return home to who you really are underneath the fear, underneath the doubt, underneath the conditioning that told you to settle. The world taught you to shrink, to hide your power, to aim lower so others feel safe. But you weren't born to dim, you were born to rise, and that rise begins the moment you stop asking, who am I to do this? And start asking, who am I not to? Because when you finally believe that your life has meaning, you treat every day like it matters. You stop wasting energy on things that drain you. You stop explaining your vision to people who don't even believe in themselves. You start building without applause. You start leading without a title. You stop waiting for the perfect moment because you are the moment. There is nothing more powerful than a human being who knows they're on purpose. Someone who is no longer chasing motivation but driven by mission. Someone who's done negotiating with fear Someone who has burned the bridge back to average and is running full speed into possibility. That kind of energy is rare, but it's in you. It's been buried under years of playing it safe, but it's there. And the moment you stop looking for external permission and start trusting that inner fire, you become dangerous to doubt, to delay, to everything that once tried to keep you small. You will be tested. Life will throw resistance your way, not to break you, but to reveal to you the power you forgot you had. Every setback will ask you one question: do you still believe? Not just when it's working, not just when it's fun, but when it's hard, when it's quiet, when you feel alone. That's when belief is measured, not in volume, but in endurance. Because belief isn't loud. It's loyal. It stays when others walk away. It keeps building when nothing is visible. It keeps showing up when the results don't come. And eventually, when the world catches up to what you've known all along, it will look like success. But you'll know the truth. It wasn't luck. It wasn't timing. It was you. Quietly, powerfully, relentlessly showing up for the future only you could see. So breathe deep, straighten your back, or speak your vision again, even if your voice shakes, even if no one claps, even if the path ahead is still unclear. You don't need all the steps, you just need the next one. And the belief that no matter how far it feels, you will get there. Because the dream was never random. It was given to you for a reason. Not to torment you, not to tease you, but to wake you up. And now you're awake. Now you remember. Now you see clearly what you must do. No more waiting, no more hiding, no more pretending you don't care. It's time. You have the fire. You have the vision. You have the strength. Now move like you believe it. If you'd like to continue this powerful series, I'm ready to keep building. There is a moment in every journey when the noise gets louder. Doubt creeps in. Fatigue sets in. The vision that once felt so clear begins to blur. This is the test that separates those who merely wish from those who are truly committed. And it doesn't show up once. It shows up again and again, disguised as failure, disguised as silence, disguised as delay. But underneath it all, it's one question being asked in different ways: will you keep going even now? That's the moment when belief is no longer a concept. It becomes your anchor. It's not something you talk about, it's something you hold on to with everything you have. Because when things aren't working, when progress is invisible, when nothing around you is giving you a reason to keep moving, your belief must become your reason. Not in what you see, but in what you know. Not in your current results, but in your future reality. You weren't given this vision to abandon it halfway. You weren't led to this place to turn back. Everything you've endured, every setback, every moment of pain, it's been shaping you for this part. The part where most people quit. The part where the old version of you would have folded. But not now. Now you know what's at stake. Now you understand that your belief is not just about you. It's about everyone your courage will one day inspire. Because when you rise, you become a mirror. You reflect what's possible. You show others what happens when someone refuses to let fear dictate their future. You give permission to the quiet voices who've buried their dreams for years. You don't just break through for yourself, you break through for them too. That's the responsibility of belief. It's not always glamorous, it's not always easy, but it is always worth it. You weren't called to live a life of comfort. You were called to live a life of purpose. And purpose requires pain. It requires patience. It requires choosing progress over perfection and process over applause. It asks you to trust when there's no evidence, to persist when there's no promise, and to give your best when you're not sure anyone will ever see it. But that's what makes it real. Anyone can move when it's easy. Anyone can believe when the path is smooth. But your strength is revealed when you walk forward through the fog, when you keep building even when no one's watching, when you look your doubt in the face and say, you don't get to decide my future. There will be days when your mind screams to take the shortcut, to lower the bar, to go back to who you used to be. Don't. Hold the line. Stand firm. Remember who you said you'd become. Remember why you started. Because the days when it feels the hardest are often the days you're closest to breakthrough. Most people quit moments before everything changes, not because they weren't capable, but because they listened to the lie that slow progress means no progress. But growth is invisible before it's undeniable. Transformation is silent before it's celebrated. And belief, Belief is built in those exact moments when you feel nothing, see nothing, but choose to keep moving anyway. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to water down your power to make others comfortable. You were born with something unique, and the world needs that, not the masked version, not the version that plays small, the real version, the bold version, the one that shows up even when it's messy, even when it's raw, especially when it's raw, because authenticity speaks louder than perfection, and belief backed by action becomes unstoppable. So let this be your reminder: you are not behind, you are not broken, you are not unworthy, you are in the middle of becoming. And this middle, the frustration, the silence, the tension, is where most quit, but it's where you will rise. Don't count yourself out because it's hard. Let that be your confirmation that you're doing something that matters. Let the challenge sharpen you. Let the doubt fuel you. Let the silence teach you that your belief isn't dependent on noise. It's rooted in your decision to never give up. You're closer than you think. The change is happening, even if you can't feel it yet, even if it's not showing on the outside. You're becoming stronger, clearer, wiser. Every day you don't quit, you're rewriting the story of what's possible for your life. So keep moving, keep believing, keep becoming. The world may not see it yet, but you do, and that's enough. I'm ready to continue when you are.